In actuality, the first old car I bought was a LaSalle, and I really fell in love with the name. You know, this is what, it sounds like a name out of the past. It sounds like an old car, and that's where I started. Loved to jump in the car and get behind the steering wheel and make off so I was driving, you know. And since I was a kid, I just loved, when my father would buy me a bike, the first thing I'd do was take it in the basement and take it apart. Well, Packard was a very, very well-built car and dependable, and you know, their motto, of course, was "Ask the man who owns one." And it was they're dynamite cars. I think they're the best built car that ever came out. They're beautiful. They're different. About the best example I could give you, just driving down through my neighborhood. You know, I could drive a 55 Chevy down through the neighborhood, and the kids playing on the front lawn, they don't even turn around and look at you. I drive a car like this, and they're hollering, "Mommy, Mommy, look at the car." You know, there's something special about the cars, you know, and I think it shouldn't be lost, you know. Most guys tie into these old cars to restore them, and they have no idea what they're getting into. And they take them apart, they strip the paint, they take everything, you know, take the engine apart and everything, and that's when you can start buying them cheap because, you know, they don't know where they're at. But how much knowledge do they need? They need an awful lot unless they got a big checkbook, you know. The guys with the big checkbook don't have to know anything. Typically speaking, I would say that I put like 4,000 to 5,000 hours in a car myself. You know, that might sound outrageous, but I tend to be too much of a perfectionist and, you know, want to make everything right. You know, typically speaking, you know, this car here was a custom-built car, whereas they really look beautiful. They're not beautiful cars. They're not built on an assembly line that's with stamping. All this stuff is handmade on this car, and consequently, you know, Joe on the right side didn't know what Mo was doing on the left side, and you know, things were really, really messed up. The cars I've been buying, well, I've brought them back from the dead, as you say, but you know, I've typically right now, old cars that are laying around from the very beginning of time, they're not there anymore. You know, so I buy cars that honestly have been restored poorly, and just go back and, you know, redo them to my liking. Yeah, I do almost everything. Of course, I'm limited. I don't do upholstery work. I don't do the chrome, actual chrome, but all the fitting and painting and body work and all that I do myself. Well, this particular car, the biggest challenge is the bad fits on the car. You see, you want all the body lines to be the same as you see on cars today. You know, the gaps are all the same. And on a custom body car like this, the gaps are terrible. What I see when I was restoring this car, I could see the foreman saying, "Hey, get it out of here, will you?" You know, that's what you're fighting on this. You know, and that's where I go and try and make it look like a factory-built car. You have to kind of be lucky to trace back the history, as strange as that may seem, you know, because, you know, today everybody keeps records of everything into computers, but back then they didn't. I was very fortunate on this that a fellow that owned it in Wisconsin in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, owned it then, and he knew the history of it, and he brought me up to date. And then I could, you know, I bought the car from a fellow in Indiana, and, you know, filled the gaps from there. Don't make it a total love affair. And one steadfast rule I got today, which I didn't have when I first got in the hobby, was the day you buy a car, be thinking about the day you got to sell it. So, you know how much, but that comes from years of being in it. You know, I can hold back a little bit, you know. It's not like puppy love in high school, you know. It's a matter of economics. The classic era is desirable, and the money kind of follows the same trail. Cadillac came into their own like in 30, 31, 32. But by 33, they lost it by advancing their body styles too much, you know, so the value really dropped off. Packard, 30, 31, 32, all the way up through 34 were desirable cars. The cars before 30 were very stodgy, and the cars after 35 on up are too modern. They're too rounded for collectors. But that also puts a spot in the hobby for, you know, people that that can't afford the cars that are very valuable. So there's room for everybody in the hobby.